They feel the sadness, maybe even a heaviness in the body, but they do not collapse into self-criticism or hopelessness. They allow the feeling, and at the same time, they remain connected to a wider perspective. Life continues. Other possibilities exist. This moment does not define everything. Equanimity also does not mean we never express emotions. It means we express them with awareness and responsibility. We can say, "I felt hurt when that happened," instead of attacking the other person. We can say, "I'm feeling overwhelmed," instead of pretending to be perfectly fine until we suddenly explode. This kind of emotional honesty actually strengthens relationships because it is real and grounded, not reactive or hidden. In suppression, we try to control emotions by force. In equanimity, we relate to them with understanding. One approach disconnects us from ourselves. The other helps us stay connected, even in discomfort. Over time, suppression often leads to emotional distance, burnout, or sudden emotional outbursts. Equanimity, by contrast, builds resilience. We become more familiar with our inner life, less afraid of difficult feelings, and more capable of staying steady while they move through us. This distinction matters deeply, because many people think that being calm means not feeling much. They try to achieve balance by closing themselves off. But true balance is not about shutting down the heart. It is about holding the heart's experiences with steadiness. We still feel joy, sadness, anger, love. The difference is that we are not lost in them. We are with them, aware, grounded, and honest about what is happening inside. And this becomes especially important in difficult moments. Equanimity in difficult situations. Equanimity becomes most visible not when life is smooth, but when it is uncomfortable, tense, or uncertain. Difficult situations are like emotional pressure tests. They show us how we usually respond when something important feels at risk. To understand this more clearly, it helps to imagine two different inner approaches in the same outer situation. One driven by automatic reaction, and the other guided by inner steadiness. Take conflict, for example. Imagine two people in a disagreement. One person hears a critical tone and immediately feels attacked. Because the comment touches their sense of identity, the body tightens, the heart rate increases, and thoughts become sharp. The cause is the perception of threat. The effect is defensiveness. Their voice rises, they interrupt, they try to win the argument. The focus shifts from understanding to protecting. Emotions such as anger, frustration, and resentment grow stronger because each reaction from the other person feels like further proof of being wronged. The conflict escalates, not necessarily because the issue is huge, but because the emotional reaction takes control. Now imagine the same situation with someone practicing equanimity. They still feel the tension. They may notice irritation or hurt, but because there is a small space of awareness, the cause does not immediately lead to the same effect. Instead of reacting at once, they recognize, "I'm feeling defensive right now." That recognition slightly softens the impulse to attack. Their voice may stay steadier, They may ask a question instead of making an accusation. This does not mean the conversation becomes easy, but it is less likely to turn into a battle. Emotional awareness reduces escalation, and that changes the direction of the interaction. Failure shows a similar contrast. Imagine not getting the job you hoped for. A reactive mind quickly moves toward harsh self-judgment. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. Because the outcome was strongly connected to self-worth, the disappointment turns into shame. The emotional vocabulary here includes hopelessness, embarrassment, and discouragement. The effect is often withdrawal or overthinking. Energy drops, motivation decreases, and the person may avoid new opportunities because the emotional pain feels too strong. An equanimous approach feels the same disappointment, but the interpretation is different. Instead of immediately turning the result into a personal failure, the person recognizes, "This didn't work out, and I feel sad about it." Sadness is allowed, but it is not mixed with strong self-attack. Because self-worth is not entirely tied to one outcome, the emotional experience is intense but more contained. The effect is that recovery is faster. The person may reflect, learn something, and try again, because their inner stability has not collapsed. Criticism is another powerful test. A reactive person often hears criticism as rejection. Even useful feedback can trigger anger or defensiveness. The cause is the feeling of being judged. The effect is closing down. The person may argue, ignore the feedback, or feel resentful. Emotional words like indignation, humiliation, and bitterness may describe their inner state. Growth becomes difficult because the emotional reaction blocks learning. In contrast, someone with equanimity may still feel the sting of criticism, but they can hold it with more balance. Because they are not completely identified with being right or perfect, they can separate the information from the emotional discomfort. They might think, "This is uncomfortable, but maybe there is something I can learn." The cause, criticism, does not automatically produce emotional shutdown. The effect is openness, even if it is not comfortable. Over time, this leads to personal development rather than repeated conflict. Uncertainty may be one of the hardest situations. When the future is unclear, the mind tries to predict and control. A reactive pattern often leads to anxiety. Thoughts race toward worst-case scenarios. The body feels restless. Because the outcome is unknown, the emotional system stays activated, sometimes for long periods. This can lead to chronic stress, irritability, and mental exhaustion. With equanimity, uncertainty is still uncomfortable, but it is approached differently. The person acknowledges, "I don't know what will happen," and that's hard. Instead of fighting reality or creating endless mental stories, they return attention to what can be done now. The emotional tone is more grounded, even if not completely calm. Acceptance reduces extra mental suffering, and this changes how energy is used. Instead of being lost in worry, the person can act where possible and rest where action is not available. In all these examples, the outer situation may be similar, but the inner relationship to it changes the emotional outcome. Reaction tends to amplify distress because thoughts and emotions feed each other in a fast loop. Equanimity interrupts that loop by introducing awareness and space. This often leads to clearer thinking, steadier behavior, and less emotional damage after the event. What is important is that this is not only relevant for dramatic moments. These same patterns appear in smaller, everyday situations too, where we have many opportunities to practice this inner balance in ordinary life. Equanimity in daily life. Equanimity is not only for big life events or deep emotional crises. In fact, it is mostly built in the small, ordinary moments that fill our days. These everyday situations may seem unimportant, but they are where our emotional habits quietly repeat themselves. Each time something minor does not go the way we want, we are given a chance to either strengthen reactivity or develop inner balance. Take traffic, for example. You are already tired, and you just want to get home. Suddenly, the road is blocked, cars are barely moving, and the minutes keep passing. You might notice irritation rising. The mind says, "This is such a waste of time," or "Why is this always happening to me?" The body tightens, the jaw clenches, and your mood changes. The situation itself is simple. Cars are moving slowly, but the emotional experience becomes heavy because of resistance. Practicing equanimity here does not mean pretending you enjoy traffic. It means noticing the frustration without adding extra mental suffering. You might think, "I feel annoyed right now," and that's understandable. With that small awareness, the irritation has less power. The traffic may still be slow, but your inner state does not have to be completely disturbed. Social media offers another daily training ground. You post something, and then you check for reactions. If there are many likes or positive comments, you feel a small lift of pleasure. If there is little response or a critical comment, disappointment or self-doubt may appear. Our mood rises and falls based on numbers and opinions. Here, equanimity means observing this emotional movement with curiosity. I notice I feel happy because people approved. Or, I notice I feel uneasy because someone disagreed. Instead of fully identifying with these reactions, we see them as temporary waves. This reduces the emotional dependency on external validation and helps us stay more stable. Mistakes are also powerful teachers. Maybe you send an email with an error, forget an appointment, or say something awkward in a conversation. The mind may immediately move toward self-criticism. "I'm so careless. I always mess up. What will they think of me?" These thoughts intensify feelings of shame or embarrassment. Practicing equanimity here means pausing and relating to the mistake with balance. You acknowledge the error, not denying it, but you avoid turning it into a story about your worth as a person. You might say internally, "I made a mistake. That's uncomfortable, but it's human." This attitude supports learning without emotional collapse. Delays are another common challenge. You are waiting for a delivery, a reply, or an event to start. The mind becomes impatient. This is taking too long. I could be doing something else. The feeling of being stuck creates restlessness. With equanimity, you recognize the impatience as an experience in the present moment, rather than a problem that must immediately be solved. You might take a breath, look around, or shift attention gently. The delay does not disappear, but the emotional tension softens because you are not fighting the reality of waiting. In all these situations, the practice is similar. First, notice the emotional reaction as it begins. Second, name it gently. Irritation, disappointment, embarrassment, impatience. Third, allow it to be there without exaggerating it or pushing it away. This simple process builds emotional familiarity. Over time, emotions feel less like enemies and more like passing weather. You still experience them, but they do not define the entire day. What makes these small moments important is repetition. We may face traffic, social media reactions, mistakes, and delays many times each week. Each one is an opportunity to strengthen the inner habit of awareness and balance. Equanimity is not built in a single dramatic moment of calm. It grows slowly through many ordinary situations where we choose not to be fully carried away by every emotional wave. This also changes how we see daily life. Instead of viewing these moments as interruptions or annoyances, we can see them as practice spaces. The world does not have to be perfect for us to feel okay. Emotional balance becomes less dependent on conditions and more connected to how we relate to them. And the more we practice in small situations, the more available this steadiness becomes when larger challenges appear. The skill of pausing. One of the most practical skills that supports equanimity is something very simple yet often overlooked: the ability to pause. A pause may last only a few seconds, but it can completely change the direction of our inner and outer experience. Without a pause, life can feel like a chain of automatic reactions. Something happens, we feel something, and we immediately act from that feeling. The process is so fast that we barely notice it. With a pause, however, a small space appears, and in that space, a different kind of choice becomes possible. There is a well-known idea in psychology that between stimulus and response, there is a gap. The stimulus is what happens: a comment, a delay, a mistake, an unexpected message. The response is what we do next, what we say, how we act, the tone we use, the decision we make. When we are stressed or emotionally triggered, this gap feels almost invisible. It seems as if the event directly causes our reaction. They made me angry. This situation stressed me out. But when we learn to pause, we begin to see that there is actually a small moment in between where awareness can enter. The pause starts with noticing. An emotion begins to rise. Maybe irritation, anxiety, or hurt. Instead of immediately speaking or acting, we bring attention inward. Something is happening inside me. This step is simple but powerful. It shifts us from being fully inside the emotion to also observing it. We are still feeling it, but we are not completely lost in it. This awareness is the beginning of emotional balance. A pause can be supported by something very basic, like one slow breath. When we breathe more slowly and consciously, the body receives a signal that there is no immediate physical danger. This can slightly calm the nervous system, which makes clear thinking more available. During this brief moment, we might silently name the emotion. This is anger, or I feel nervous. Naming the emotion helps organize the experience. It becomes something we are aware of, rather than something that fully controls us. This does not mean the emotion disappears. The pause is not a magic trick to remove feelings. Instead, it gives us the chance to choose how to relate to them. Without a pause, anger might turn into sharp words, anxiety into avoidance, sadness into withdrawal. With a pause, we can ask a different question. What would be a wise response here? This question creates distance from the first impulse. We move from reaction to intention. Choosing behavior does not mean choosing what we feel. Feelings often arise automatically, but we do have influence over what we do next. For example, during an argument, the first impulse might be to interrupt or raise the voice. In the pause, we might notice, I really want to defend myself right now. That awareness gives us options. We might still speak, but in a calmer tone. We might ask for clarification instead of attacking. The outer situation may still be challenging, but the quality of our participation changes. The pause also helps us break old emotional patterns. Many of our reactions are habits learned over years. Certain tones, words, or situations automatically trigger specific responses. Without awareness, these patterns repeat again and again. The pause interrupts this automatic chain. Each time we pause, we create a small moment of freedom from habit. Even if we do not choose perfectly, the act of pausing itself strengthens self-awareness. Mindfulness, in a simple sense, is closely related to this skill. It means paying attention to the present moment with openness and without immediate judgment. When we pause mindfully, we notice sensations in the body, thoughts in the mind, and emotions in the heart. We do not rush to change them. This calm observation reduces emotional intensity over time, because we are no longer adding layers of resistance or dramatic stories. We are simply present with what is. Over time, practicing the pause builds trust in ourselves. We begin to see that we do not have to follow every emotional impulse. We can feel strongly and still act thoughtfully. This strengthens a sense of inner stability. Life continues to present challenges, but we experience ourselves as more capable of meeting them with awareness rather than pure reactivity. And this simple skill, just a few seconds of conscious space, becomes one of the foundations of equanimity. Practices to develop equanimity. Equanimity may sound like a deep or advanced state, but it is built through very small, practical habits. These habits do not require special beliefs, long retreats, or dramatic lifestyle changes. They are simple ways of relating to our inner experience that gradually strengthen emotional balance. The key is consistency rather than intensity. Small practices, repeated often, slowly change how we respond to life. One of the most accessible tools is conscious breathing. Our breath is always with us, and it is closely connected to our nervous system. When we are stressed or upset, breathing often becomes shallow and fast. This signals the body to stay in a state of alertness. By gently slowing the breath, especially the exhale, we send a different message: that we are safe enough to soften. A simple practice might be to pause a few times a day and take 3 slow breaths, feeling the air move in and out. During an emotional moment, even one deeper breath can create a small shift. Breathing does not remove the problem, but it supports a calmer internal state from which we can respond more wisely. Another helpful habit is emotional labeling, putting simple words to what we feel. This may sound too easy, but it has a strong effect. When an emotion is unnamed, it can feel overwhelming and confusing. When we quietly say to ourselves, "I feel frustrated," or "This is anxiety," the experience becomes clearer and more manageable. Research shows that naming emotions can reduce their intensity because it engages parts of the brain related to awareness and regulation. Emotional labeling also builds familiarity. Instead of being surprised by feelings, we start to recognize patterns and respond with more understanding. Slowing down is another practice that supports equanimity. Much of our reactivity comes from speed. Fast thoughts, fast speech, fast decisions. When everything moves quickly, there is little space for awareness. Slowing down does not mean becoming inefficient. It means introducing small moments of deliberateness. For example, before replying to a message that triggers emotion, we might wait a minute. Before entering an important conversation, we might take a few breaths. We might walk a little more slowly or eat without rushing. These small changes give the mind time to process rather than react automatically. Over time, this creates a more stable inner rhythm. Observing thoughts is also important. Many emotions grow stronger because we believe every thought that appears. If the mind says, "This is a disaster," or "They don't respect me," we often treat these thoughts as facts. Practicing observation means noticing thoughts as mental events, not absolute truths. We might think, "I'm having the thought that this will go badly." This slight change in language creates distance. We are still aware of the thought, but we are not fully inside it. This reduces the emotional chain reaction that thoughts can trigger. These practices are simple, but their effect is gradual. They train the mind to be less reactive and more aware. Each time we breathe consciously, label an emotion, slow down, or observe a thought, we strengthen a different inner habit. Instead of immediately following every impulse, we become more familiar with our inner landscape. Emotions still arise, but they feel less overwhelming because we know how to stay with them. It is important to keep these practices realistic. We are not trying to feel calm all the time or to eliminate strong emotions. Some days will still feel messy, and that is normal. The goal is not perfection, but progress. A slightly longer pause, a slightly softer reaction, a little more understanding toward ourselves. Over weeks and months, these small shifts accumulate. We begin to notice that situations that once disturbed us deeply now feel more manageable. Equanimity grows from this gentle, repeated effort. It is less about dramatic breakthroughs and more about daily micro-choices. Each breath, each moment of awareness, each decision to slow down is like adding a small stone to a foundation. Eventually, that foundation becomes strong enough to support us even when life feels intense. Misunderstandings about calmness. When people hear about emotional balance or inner calm, they often imagine something inaccurate. Calmness is sometimes misunderstood as weakness, passivity, or a lack of emotion. These beliefs can prevent us from developing equanimity because we fear becoming less capable, less expressive, or less alive. But when we look more closely, we see that true calmness is not the absence of strength. It is a different form of strength altogether. The idea that calm means weak usually comes from confusing loudness with power. In many situations, strong emotion looks impressive. Raised voices, dramatic reactions, and visible intensity can give the impression of confidence or control. A calm person, by contrast, may speak more slowly, listen more, and react less visibly. From the outside, this can be misinterpreted as a lack of force. But internally, calmness often requires more strength, not less. It takes strength to stay steady when emotions are pulling strongly. It takes inner stability to choose not to escalate a conflict. A person who can remain composed while others are reactive is not weak. They are showing self-mastery. The belief that calm means passive is another misunderstanding. Passivity means avoiding action, not expressing needs, or allowing situations to continue even when change is necessary. Equanimity does not ask us to become silent or inactive. Instead, it helps us act with clarity rather than impulse. A calm person can still say no, set boundaries, or make firm decisions. The difference is in how they do it. Their actions are less driven by emotional urgency and more guided by intention. Because they are not overwhelmed by anger or fear, their words can be more precise and effective. In fact, calmness often increases our ability to act. When emotions are very intense, our thinking can become narrow. We focus on defending ourselves or escaping discomfort. Calmness widens perspective. It allows us to see more options and choose the most helpful response. For example, during a disagreement, a reactive person may push harder, speak louder, or shut down completely. A calm person can still express disagreement, but in a way that keeps communication open. This is not passivity, it is skillful engagement. Another common myth is that calmness means having no feelings. Some people imagine an emotionally balanced person as distant or detached, almost like they are not touched by life. But equanimity does not remove emotion. It changes our relationship to it. A calm person can feel joy deeply, experience sadness fully, and know